Let's date forever. Here's your weekly dose of relationship fuel with Sammi and Nathan Yeager. Hello and welcome to Date Forever. In this week's episode, we're chatting about the role that dating apps have played in society today, how hookup culture has changed romantic relationships, and the future trends of dating and relationships. But before we dive into that, Sammi, what's been fueling you up this week?
Oh my gosh, I spent so much time with my friends this week.
All weekends?
Yeah, all weekend. So my relationships and network tank is feeling really full because I had a heap of my girlfriends over for dinner on Friday night and we played Esther Perel's card game, Where Should We Begin?, which is this beautiful deck of cards which has conversation prompts. So we took it in turns. We played a couple of rounds and it really sparked some really beautiful conversation, but it also created the opportunity for my girlfriends and I to kind of reflect and be like, do you know what? We are really quite open and vulnerable with one another in our normal, unprompted lives, which was really nice to reflect. And there wasn't really any moments of someone feeling like they didn't have something to share or that they were deeply uncomfortable with the direction of the conversations, because they are some very not surface level kind of questions. Yeah. Some of them sparked funny stories, some sparked sad stories. But yeah, it was really beautiful. And then I had the chance for a couple of those girlfriends to have a multi-night sleepover. So Nathan was a bit scarce from our apartment this weekend as it was full of ladies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was really, really beautiful. Lots and lots of quality time. And I know we've talked about this on the show before, but kind of the difference of catching up with friends versus hanging out with friends. And I do find that when you get the opportunity to have a little sleepover or a getaway or extended periods of time in each other's company, that you get to have more incidental kind of conversations, and it's not like this speed agenda catch up. How's work? How's your mum? How's your brother? How's your partner? How's your cat? Like you get to really just hang out, and that's what this weekend was all about for me, and that was the highlight of my week. But I feel like my career and business tank is feeling a little low because of so many short weeks in a row.
I know, it's been a bit of a battle, hasn't it?
Yeah, with Easter and I had an extra long weekend, so yeah, that tank is going to need some love in the next week or so. What about you, Nath? What fueled you up?
So as you mentioned, I was a little bit scarce around home over the weekend. But one of the things that I did was I took myself on a little solo date to the cinema and out for dinner and to the pub as well to watch the footy. And I had a really nice evening, just by myself. And it is one of those things where I often don't prioritize kind of that time with myself.
Even as an introvert,
yeah. And it was just really nice to be able to go and do a few things that I wanted to do, make the decisions myself, and enjoy a movie.
How good is going to the movies by yourself?
Yeah, it was really good. Had a choc top.
I think it's a highly underrated experience.
Yeah.
Going by yourself, great, so great.
It is really good. Yeah, and I had a really fun date by myself. So my self-tank's feeling quite fueled up at the moment. But this episode's going to be all about romantic relationships and dating, so let's jump into the app.
Aditi Paul is a former professor based in New York City. She examined the impact of using online dating on relationships and intimacy. Aditi's research has been published in top academic journals and has been featured globally in prominent media outlets. Her book, The Current Collegiate Hookup Culture, Dating Apps, Hookup Scripts and Sexual Outcomes, is out on Amazon now.
Welcome to the show, Aditi.
Hi, Sammi. Hi, Nathan.
Oh, it's really exciting to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here.
We are stoked to have this conversation because we started dating pre-dating app. We have been together since 2007.
Yeah.
How is that possible? You guys look like 15 years old.
I know, right? How good are we we're gonna look great when we're 40 or 50. We're still gonna be able to pass as like early 30s.
The Zoom filters might be helping slightly, but no.
So we did not do the dating app thing. We met actually when we were quite a lot younger. We went to high school together, but only dated after high school. We actually moved in together as housemates and friends first and fell in love. So I am curious about dating apps. I'm curious about the impact that they're having on the landscape of relationships and the way that we see other human beings and relationships with other human beings and how it's shaping our sexual experiences, especially early on in a relationship. So I want to know, how did you get interested in this?
I want to start this conversation with the fact that being in a relationship and being on dating apps do not have to be mutually exclusive with each other. I'm just saying there are so many couples and there are so many dating apps right now that cater to couples who are in a relationship and they want to try something new because everybody's looking for a safe space to experiment. So I'm just saying, Sammy and Nathan, if you're
The
having
window has not
intense
closed.
FOMO, if you have intense FOMO, then there are online dating apps like Field, for example, where you can like dip your tippity toe and get an idea of like, on a Saturday night we are bored and Netflix does not have anything good to offer. Let's go to Field and figure out what's going on. You can do that. So
thank you for that invitation.
Absolutely, in case you needed permission. But I honestly, a couple of factors led me to my interest in online dating. First, obviously, if you're a researcher in the social sciences, if you're a researcher anywhere, uh, if a researcher says that, oh, I just wanted to research this for the intellectual curiosity, that researcher is lying. That's bullshit. If you're in the social sciences and if you are researching something, it's coming from a place of passion. It's coming from a very personal place more often than not. For example, if you're researching about inequality or if you're researching about racial equity or gender equity, chances are you have had a brush with it and now you're curious about it. That was the same for me. So I moved to the US in 2010, and my first experience in the landscape of dating as an international student in the US was online dating apps. I didn't know anybody. I didn't have an existing network. I know, Sammy and Nathan, you mentioned that you were high school sweethearts. First of all, I went to an all girls high school. Not that it should have been a deal breaker, but I am unfortunately heterosexual. So I'm like, okay, that shouldn't be so. And I moved thousands of miles away from my hometown. So I knew nobody in the US. And an easy way into the dating pool was online dating. So I had everybody at the palm of my hands. And that got me curious about online dating. What solidified my research interest in online dating was a paper that I had written in 2014 that went super viral. After that paper went out, I shit you not, one day I get an email from Playboy magazine asking for my quote. And I'm like, first of all, what? Second of all, who is reading Playboy for research? Like, who just picked up Playboy and be like, I'm just gonna skip past these naked women and like look at what research is saying. I'm like, this has to be a hoax. Like could be. And what a time to live in where my Indian immigrant parents have to tell my family that, oh, my daughter was in Playboy. It's like it's a flex, but it's also not a flex. And now you have to contextualize what Playboy is to them. Who wants to go down that road?
Maybe it's about reading research papers. Maybe it's a disguise for everybody reading
I feel like
Playboy.
it's lies.
Reading research papers.
I'm reading this. This is for intellectual curiosity only.
that's it.
Sapiosexual, guys. That's what it is. But that research going viral showed me that research is cool. It's not just for like nerds. And online dating research has a real appetite in the general audience. So I didn't do anything much in that front for the next couple of years, but then I started teaching students. And these were all students who did not belong to the same generation I was, right? I'm a through and through millennial. And now my students over the years, because I taught at a university for 4, 5, 6 years, around the fifth or sixth year, I started becoming uncool. I started becoming this like person who's older than the students, who's taking dated references. For example, How I Met Your Mother. They're like, what is that? And their use of technology was changing. And I was looking at their use, and then I was looking at the research. and they were very disconnected. The research was saying that, oh, online dating apps are destroying the moral fabric of the youth of America. Everybody is becoming so anti relationships. Everybody is jumping on these apps and having rabid sex. And here are my students who have so much social anxiety, they cannot say hello to the person sitting next to them in class. And they're so overworked, they are so tired, they are going to their dorm rooms and sleeping. They are not just hovering over to some other random dude's house and having sex with them and never calling them. So there was a disjoint between what I was seeing and what was being portrayed as what young people were doing in the tabloids and in recent research. So over the pandemic, I thought of bridging this gap, and that gap became my book.
Okay. Interesting. So we have a couple of friends who work in universities here in Australia, and we sat down and had dinner with them, and they were making some commentary about the new students that were entering first year university after the pandemic, and how much that social anxiety had escalated even from the couple of years before, where they'd already noticed some behavioural change in sort of first year students, but how much those couple of global pandemic years had impacted, you know, students really having those last couple of years of high school and going to proms or formals, and those developing more social skills, and how big the lag is. So I imagine that we're still going to have a little bit of time before we kind of catch that up again.
That's there, right? So there's a difference between social anxiety and face to face interaction. What they have missed out on is having face to face interactions. That doesn't mean that they have forgotten how to talk to people, right? That this is something that we keep hearing, that, oh my God, kids today, because they were pandemic kids, like, do you even know how to pick up a phone and talk? That's the same as telling millennials, do you even know how to go to a random, like, your friend's house and knock on their door? Like, who wants to do that? Hashtag boundaries, please.
Yeah.
Right? Like, what phone calls were to us, texting is to them. It's just the low hanging communication uh, mode has changed, right? Before, we thought, okay, before, our parents who did not, or grandparents who did not have phones, the only way that they could connect with their friends was going to their homes, or telegram, I don't know. And then our parents had their phones, we had pagers, we had missed calls, right? Like, we had all these. And now students have things like Discord, they have things like Instagram, they have things like TikTok. The mode of light communication has changed. It doesn't mean that that has contributed to their social anxiety. What social anxiety is our anxiety about us being accepted in a social interaction. So, what has happened with young kids is that there are so many feedback channels that they need to negotiate, because when you're saying something, because most of the communication now between them is written, how is it landing on the other page? Am I going to get cancelled? Am I saying something insensitive? They do not have the agency or the freedom that we had to be an absolute fool and not have any traces about it. Right now, they have to be very mindful for even the slightest thing that they're doing, because it's all sticky. It sticks. There are digital vestiges of what you're saying. And that, coupled with the fact that there are so many ways they can get feedback to what they're saying, that's increasing their social anxiety more than like, oh, I didn't go to prom. That too, but also this idea of, like, I can be rejected, I people can come at me. That level of, like, seeking acceptance at a very young age, and that infinite loop of feedback, or people can come back to me, and I have to stand up for what I said, etc., that is affecting their sense of anxiety.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And I know that even for us, like we were kind of, well, I think we just missed Facebook at high school.
Yeah, I
Like
think
it was,
I got Facebook 2007.
yeah, like
the
just
year we started
after,
dating.
just after our high school.
I mean, high school was anyway so catty. Remember, like, you couldn't pay me enough to go back to high school. I'm like, damn, that was a messy period in my life. And I just shudder thinking that, man, like, you're going to bully and you're going to get bullied. That's it. That's the rule of high school. And I shudder thinking about how if that bullying would propagate in digital communication, right? Like couple of people hanging up on you and now they have a secret Instagram page like dissing you. That's just magnifying the cruelty that childhood anyways has embedded in it.
Oh,
uh
absolutely.
that's all of it that young children have to go. I'm like, listen, I mean, I'm kind of glad that I did not have this at an impressionable
Yeah.
age. I
Mm.
don't know how you guys are doing it.
Yeah, even social media like Facebook and stuff like that. I look back at some of the stuff that we posted up early, and like the use
Cringe.
of,
Just cringe.
yeah, the use of Facebook was
So
so different
cringe.
back then. Like it was it was still kind of your community, and that's what you were sharing to. And so the stuff that we were sharing there was so different now to what people can share today. And we clearly didn't have any social anxiety about what we were putting out there because we thought it was to our community.
We didn't know
We
any
didn't know any
better. Yeah,
better.
we didn't
Yeah,
know any
exactly.
better. Yeah. I mean, we were having cringe ass conversations that we would probably put in like the invisible mode on Instagram right now. Right? I'm like, first of all, this is not going to be in public. This is going to be in a DM. And even when it is in a DM, I don't want to remind myself that I haven't said this. Right? So like that's the level of like forgetting that I want it to be. And I'm having these rabid conversations and posting shit on somebody else's Facebook wall for the world to see.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, what is this cringe festival that I was celebrating back then? But you know what? This also goes back to how much we're controlled by
Mm.
technology.
Hmm.
Because what we thought was not cringe is cringe now. 10 years later, what we are doing now, this could be cringe, right? Like, can you believe they were having podcasts about like relationships? What even the fuck is that? Right? Like, they were having 1 hour conversations about dating. Like, who's to say that podcasts are not going to be cringe 5 years from
Yeah.
now?
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows?
exactly. Yeah,
Who
and
knows?
I think that's really interesting in the sense of dating apps as well. And you kind of mentioned about the hookup culture, or like when dating
Mm.
apps sort of first came about, that's what they were about. Like Tinder started out as that hookup app.
Yeah, so with that whole shift that Nathan and I have not really been part of, what are you seeing? How is that shaping the early stages of relationships, and what are we seeing? What's the difference?
The biggest shift that I have noticed, by the way, are you millennials, zillennials, or Gen Z?
I'm about to turn 34, so millennial.
Millennial. Okay, so yeah, millennial, zillennial, like that, right? So we had it hard, my friends. We had it hard because we were the generation who did not have digital parents.
No.
Mm.
Right, we were the children and we were the parents. That is, we are the first generation who's using technology, because for everything else in our lives I'm deferring to my parents approval or like parents advice. And here we are with this new technology. We are figuring shit out on our own, right? So we are the first humans in this earth called digital technology. So a lot of the things that we use technology for, the use of it has changed. So, for example, when Tinder came out, that was the first time we were using something called a dating app, right? Now we have millions and zillions of dating apps. But Tinder was the first dating app that we are using. And we're like, oh my God, this is dating. Tinder did not ever promote themselves as a hookup app, by the way. They just became one. It's like one of those pubs or clubs that you have in your neighborhood who has just gotten a name. Right? It didn't
Mm.
want to be that place, but it has become that place. And Tinder became a hookup app. It's known to be a hookup app. But you know what the paradox of the situation is? It's something called pluralistic ignorance. Pluralistic ignorance is, let's say you go to a CD bar and Sammy, you're looking for a relationship. Nathan is also looking for a relationship. But Sammy thinks Nathan is looking for something casual. Nathan is thinking Sammy is looking for something casual because they're in the CD bar. Because the bar
Mm.
is a hookup bar. Whether either of you wanted a true relationship. And that's what's happening with people on Tinder. I'm like, oh, it's supposed to be a casual app. So maybe the other person also is casual. And God forbid, when we are getting to know a person, we don't want to be too assertive to shoo them away. So we are like, yeah, I'm just
Mm.
looking around. That's what happened with us. We pinned a lot of our hopes on Tinder too fast, too soon. We thought that this is the ultimate way of finding love. Dating apps were promoted to us as the ultimate way of finding love. People were saying 1 in 5 relationships are starting online. We were like, damn, this is the place to be. But now what's happening is dating apps, at least how Gen Z uses it uses it as just another app. They have multiple dating apps, just like they have Uber Eats, just like they have DoorDash, just like they have some other food delivery company. They are just like, these are places. I mean, I can buy meat on Uber Eats. You can also buy meat on Tinder. So, but it's just okay. What is my spread today? And one Gen Z kid who I spoke with, I found it to be so extremely interesting, but also no, I totally see why she would do that. So she said that, oh, I use Tinder when I miss validation. So let's say you take a fire picture at a vacation, and you're putting it on Instagram where the same regulars are seeing it, right? Like your friends are hyping you up and like, yes, girl, you look gorgeous, and like whatever. And then you're not, probably she's not getting the male gaze. She just wants to be validated when she's looking like a klutz on a Saturday night. So she just hops on Tinder, gets that validation on that picture, right? Gets some like spicy DMs, and when it's done, it's done. Like she gets out. So this has become very utilitarian rather than relational.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I guess like a lot of those interactions are probably things that past generations were getting at things like bars or like face-to-face social gatherings and things like that. And I know that definitely when we've gone out recently or when we've been in some of those social things, a lot of people do just stick to their own groups and a lot less willing to mingle. And so that's really interesting that they're using things like Tinder to get that social validation, whereas like that might have been done in face-to-face like previously.
Yeah.
So how are you seeing the use of digital technologies, apps, in shaping relationship culture past meeting? Because, I hear and see friends get in what they're calling situationships, where it's not really a relationship. It's like on again, off again. No, it doesn't sound like it's something that has a lot of clarity or boundaries or either party advocating for what they really want.
That's right.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what it is, how it's impacting relationships overall? Where do we go from here?
If you truly zoom out of dating apps and if you look at any social apps, how do we quantify or how do we feel that we are humans or we are wanted human, not wanted humans like the CIA, but like we are humans who are wanted by our social network? We find solace in numbers. Numbers give us a sense of validation.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same as like, oh, you have 1,000 Facebook friends, but how many people are your ride or dies? But it kind of gives you a nice little like social capital that, oh, I have like 1,800 friends and I can get these like, what do you call, low order communication cues that you're in touch, right? Like five people liked your photo versus one person picked up the call and says, Aditi, like, that's a really nice thing that you wore, right? Like we'd rather have the first one rather than the second one. So if you look, we cannot just look at dating apps, because dating apps, just like Marvel comics, it belongs in a universe of apps, right? So you have to look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is saying more is better. Rapidity, churn is better, right? Unlimited options are better because it's giving me the idea that like, oh, I will never run out of this. That's what's happening with dating apps, right? And something that you said, lack of boundaries. I would add another factor to it: lack of boundaries and lack of vulnerability. These
Yeah.
two factors play such a big role in why we do what we do with dating apps. Because think about it, how do situationships work on dating apps? Let's say Sammy goes on a dating app. Nathan, she's still with you. Don't freak out. So she just wants to test the waters, right? Let's say that Sammy goes to a dating app, and you guys, for this example, are not together. Um, she goes on a dating app, she meets five guys, but they all look cute to her, they strike up a conversation. Where does the chat go from there? The next place where the chat goes from inside the app is texting. From texting, where does it go? It can either lead to TikTok, because you're trying to share memes with each other, you're trying to share some songs with each other, you're trying to create common ground. What does that do? Now you have to include this person in your social network, digital social network, not actual social network. So you go to their Instagram pages. But in the meantime, as she's having conversation with person one, person two also catches her fancy, right? And she kind of drops the ball on person one and goes talk to person two. But person one is in her social network already. So now Sammy is putting up some thirst traps to attract person two, because person two is more interesting to talk to, but person one is also looking at her photos and thinking, well, I didn't have a fallout with Sammy. She's putting this fire picture. Is there something there? Right? And then he doesn't know, should I stay or should I go? Is this a limbo? What is happening? So all of this, the fact that we are not willing to just say no to somebody, the fact that we think more is better, all of these factors muddled together are leading to half-baked relationships that are called situationships, which should give you a sense of fulfillment, but it truly does the opposite, because you're not in it for good with anybody.
Yeah. I really liked what you said there about the willingness for vulnerability, because we had a guest on the show, Simon Taylor, and he had been seeing this girl and they had slept together for one last hurrah, and she fell pregnant. And she reached out to him and said, hey, I'm pregnant. I've decided I'm going to keep this baby. Caveat, you could be the dad or this other guy could be the dad. And I genuinely don't know if it is you or if it's this other guy. And he spent, obviously, the duration of this pregnancy very unclear about whether or not he's going to become a dad and his whole life's going to change or what. So he talked about the transformation between that experience and dating after that experience. It turned out that he was not the dad. They had all of the testing done. They know who the biological father is. But it fundamentally changed the way that he approached dating, because he had considered his life in all of these other ways about what would I need to do with my career? What would I need to do with the location geographically where I live? Where do I want to be living? And he'd imagined himself in all of these scenarios. And he said it fundamentally changed the way that he was accessing dating apps and the conversations he was leading with, because he had so much more clarity on what he did want. And that he had this huge willingness to be vulnerable and say, well, this is what I want, which he wasn't doing before.
That's right. It is, and it is truly the case. By the way, this story is so similar to this show, Modern Love. There is this one episode where the protagonist, William Jackson Harper, he has his life fundamentally changed because he had a pregnancy scare. And now that you bring up a very interesting point, that it is these pivotal events that you have in your life that propels you to set your boundaries, that propels you to put your foot down and be vulnerable and open and bold. And that truly becomes the triggering point of whether you fail at dating apps or you don't fail at dating apps. And I've seen this over and over and over and over and over and over again, where people come to an age and you're like, you know what? No, 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 Jonathan, I'm not going to fake my interest in your obsession with soccer. And I'm not going to do that. Like, this is what I want. If this scares you, great. Get the fuck out. Right? So that lack of embracing bullshit, knowing what you want, and then wading through the crowd that is dating apps, that is the way to go. And that all comes back to, what is this compass inside of you? Is it aligned? If it is, dating apps are going to work. If this is all over the place, dating apps are just a catalyst to make this even more unaligned.
And that's kind of what Simon talked about, was that once he'd got such clarity over what he wanted, the number of matches was a whole lot less, and he was almost like filtering people out quite a lot quicker, because it was just like, we're not in alignment, and therefore why am I going to spend time and energy connecting with someone who we're not in alignment? Like, what? That's not worth my energy, not worth their energy. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste their time. And he really talked about that was a bit scary in the beginning, because it was like, oh my gosh, I thought I had this huge pool of people to be matching with, and I've now realized that it's actually quite a lot smaller. But I think that willingness to maybe advocate for what you want,
firstly get clear on what you want, I guess, and that's something that if you are in the early stage of looking for someone, you probably might not even know what you're actually after.
That's right. And then it's like Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. Like you don't know what you want, and then we put you in this chocolate factory with like tons of chocolate. Like of course you're gonna be overwhelmed. And yeah,
Snozzberries and
that's right. I want everything, and then like you're a mess at the end of the day. So yeah, truly that's the case.
So, Aditi, I'm curious, once we've met somebody and decided to move from maybe the app to situationship to meaningful relationship, you and me, exclusive, we're doing it. What is the role that sex and hooking up kind of plays in that early stage of a relationship?
The thing with sex and hookups right now, the thing that I found on in my research is more often than not, when young people, Gen Z, are hooking up, they are not talking about having sex. And you will see numerous studies which come up and say, young people are not having as much sex as old people. We are not. And we think that young people are asexual. That is not the case. That is not the case. Again, we go back to what is it that we had at our disposal, right? Like if you and okay, I'm not gonna be that pervy person who's like, Sammy and Nathan, when did you do it for the first time? No, but think about your interaction, right? Like, did you have cell phones back then? Was it texts?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
okay, not smartphones, right?
Just a smartphone.
Just a smartphone.
Yeah, very just, very new. Oh, actually, no, it was probably a year or two after, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I reckon, when did the first iPhone come out? Like 2010?
No, I reckon it was about 2008. Yeah,
Okay.
something like
Around
that.
about.
Yeah.
You definitely had a phone that could take a picture. How pixelated that picture was.
However pixelated that was. Yeah. This was
Yeah.
Vine's time, like the Vine's ages. So at that point, like imagine how you guys got into a relationship and how your parents or your elder siblings got into their relationship. When you and Nathan had to escalate the intimacy of your relationship, you just didn't like smother over each other. You might have talked about it. You might have even texted about it, right? You might have said, "Oh, I'm not sexting on your behalf, but what I'm driving to the point is that there was a pre-play before the play happened, right? There was a pre-play. You did it with words. Now kids are doing with pictures. Kids are doing it in 4D that you did in like 180p, right? Like so that's what is happening. So it's like they have these affordances, these digital things in their hands, which is letting them foreplay. So it's digital foreplay. When they do meet, what happens is now they have laid the land, right? They might have sent each other some spicy photos. They might have talked about, oh, when I meet you, I'm going to do this. Something spicy has gone down. So when they meet, right, now everything has been well seasoned. Now you put I was gonna say now you put it in the oven, right? Like now you go from a 0 to 100 because you've already gone from a 0 to a 60 in your chat, right? So when they do meet, they're escalating really, really fast. But they're also not meeting as often, right? They're mitigating a lot of these things through digital communication. So their sexual relationships are getting more protracted, which was much shorter for us back in the day, right? When we did not have these means. So the only way I could get intimate, the only way you could get intimate with your partner was to actually do it. For them, it can be multiple steps. Who's to know, who's to say that as sex technology is getting more advanced, that my phone will not have the mechanism of escalating or like including haptics in our connection, right? Like so it's how much is being mediated by technology that can affect what the meaning of sex is. Earlier in the day, actually, kissing was not significant because that's the first step that you had access to. For now, if you're kissing somebody, that means, oh, this kiss means something because we have sexted quite a lot, right? This sex means something because we have sexted and we have had fillet whatever oral sex and now we're having sex. So the meaning of each of these things that we thought were casual, but for them it's more significant because there's so many steps before it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. So I'm curious, you've done quite a lot of research and talked a lot about this this evolution that society is going through. What do you think is next? What do you think? Do you think the role of relationships is going to change? Do you think it's going to stay as important as it has been? What do you think is next?
I almost want to draw a parallel between fashion and dating. You know how things come back in fashion right now? We're going through a 90s phase. That might come back into fashion for relationships where people, young people, and this could be attributed to two factors. Number one is a pushback for the generation that comes before us. We as millennials have fucked it up so bad in terms of like overusing dating apps, just being hot messes with technology, where the generation after you is of course going to revolt. Everything you've done is uncool, man. Like everything you've done is uncool. So I'm going to do the exact opposite, right? Like, you know, how we started all of a sudden using like these records or like whatever gramophones as like, or we've started using those Polaroid cameras because that's chic now, right? Like that's a symbol. So we have gunned for hookup culture so bad that now the next generation, just as a I don't want to be like you, is separating themselves from it. They're like, I'm just not going to have sex because I want to have sex. I have goddess energy, right? I have boundaries. Nobody can get access to me. So that's one thing that can happen. And the second thing that I see happening is people or individuals prioritizing themselves and finding meaning in that versus being in a relationship. So, what I mean by that is Xing out of relationships faster, right? If shit doesn't work out, right? Like, okay, I have an abundance of relationships and I am not being treated well, right? Like, the TikTok algorithm is so polite that it personalizes it to my needs, right? Even the TikTok understands I'm me as a person, right? How are you not understanding? So we can take boundary setting to a narcissistic level where we are like, I'm out. I'm not going to put any effort because it's not how I should be treated, etc. So take it for what it is. It can go either way. Monogamy can come back because there's a pushback toward millennial hookup culture,
Mm.
and churn rate can go up where you're getting into relationships but you're not sticking around because you're prioritizing yourself to a possibly toxic level.
Mm. I think that's really interesting what you just said. And I think it's Esther Perel has said quite commonly, like monogamy used to mean one partner for life, and now monogamy just means one partner at a time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think that we're having a lot more conversations about the different structures, the different dynamics, what's available, open relationships, polyamory, and almost any combination you want to seek now, I feel is like far more accessible too. So I feel like it's going to be really interesting to see how relationships continue to evolve, especially as we know that we're now living a whole lot longer than the generations before us. Like, is the first version of monogamy that I mentioned, one partner for life, is that even viable when you live for 100 years?
That's right. That's right. We'll see. I love that. Esther Perel is such a dynamic. I love her so
She's
much.
wonderful.
And she just lays it as it is, right? Like, love it. Love love her. Yeah, one partner at a time. There was a TikTok, again, I'm telling you, all of my sentences start like this. I'm like, I saw a TikTok. This guy says dating nowadays is like, who is my favorite now? Right? Like, can you come through now? It's just that. It's instant gratification mixed with unlimited bottomless pit of options, mixed with all of it. Like, I haven't done my research, but if I were to redo this research, I would account for so many different variables to figure out the answer to the question that what's going to happen in the future. Right now, all we can do is hypothesize.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're here on Date Forever. I'm talking about a relationship with self and a relationship with others. I'm curious, what are you doing for your relationship for yourself? What are some of the habits and practices that you've got to keep your relationship fueled up?
Oh my gosh, it has been such a learning. I went to therapy. Let's put it that way. That's the
Yeah.
first thing you must do. That's the first thing you must do. Your partner is not there to make you fill your cup, right? It's not fair to them, it's not fair to you. So your partner is not your therapist. Get your fix of your problems from a therapist so you can have a functional view of love and sex. There is nothing wrong with hookup culture inherently. There is nothing wrong with love. There is nothing wrong with monogamy. What you must be mindful for is your intent behind it. What is your intent in hooking up with all these people? What is your intent in being in love? What is your intent in wanting to be in a relationship? Always be mindful of that. And that truth can be hard to digest. And Roxane Gay talks about this. Roxane Gray or Roxane Gay, something. She says that, like, the truth will first break you, and then it's going to set you free. And a lot of us don't want to be broken. So we'd rather live in a cushy delusion versus rise up to the idea that what is it that I'm truly doing? So that's the first thing. Second thing you want to do is watch Daniel Sloss. Have you watched Daniel Sloss?
The Jigsaw.
Oh my God.
Daniel
that
Sloss is
guy.
a comedian, if anyone hasn't heard, and he has this idea that very, very few people in the world have their magic jigsaw person who fits together with all the right curves, all the right bumps, all the right shapes. But for the most part, a lot of us are trying to mash two jigsaw pieces together that just don't match, and they're not meant to be together forever.
Right.
But he's very, very funny and very dark. Recommend.
So good. So highly recommend. I read his book. His book is Everybody You Hate Is Gonna Die. Best book ever. If you have a couple of dollars, don't buy my book, buy Daniel's book. That's how I will die on that hill. But yeah, that the reason why I'm asking that is, know why you want to be in a relationship. And number 3 is just do what makes you happy, man. Like, you don't have to conform to, like, the shoulds are so over hyped. Like, I should be doing this, I should be single, I should be married. Like, who the fuck cares? Do what makes you happy. Do what makes you happy. And like Cheryl Lee Ralph said in her very recent speech and Critics' Choice Award, that people don't have to love you, people don't have to respect you, but when you look in the mirror, you better respect the person that you see. And whether that comes from being celibate, whether that comes from being an absolute raging slut machine, do whatever you want, right? Like, it's your life, live it.
Yeah. I think that's the first time we've had the term slut machine on the show. So I appreciate that. Maybe that's what we'll call this episode. I love it.
Love it.
Aditi, thank you so much for joining us and sharing some of your knowledge, your insights, some of your predictions about how this landscape might play out. So much of the conversation that we have on this show is about nurturing the relationship that you're in, not necessarily the climate of what's happening when you're trying to start one. So I appreciate your insights and the lens that you're coming from, and how that plays into, like you said, a universe of all of the separate parts that are contributing to what we're seeing and what we're experiencing. So thank you for sharing your genius with us. To say thank you, we have given a child in Cambodia a school uniform so that they can access schooling. So thank you so much for that.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for, first of all, like, inviting me. Secondly, to open up these not so easy, difficult conversations that ultimately help our relationships with each other and with ourselves. And oh my gosh, thank you for the positive karma with the donation. I truly appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, no worries. So, Aditi, if people want to connect with you or learn a little bit more about your research, how can they do that?
The best place to find me is, are you ready for the most dull answer ever? Through LinkedIn. Yes, I went there. But LinkedIn is where I live my best life. I post anything and everything on LinkedIn because why not? Get the suits to enjoy. So LinkedIn is a really good platform to connect with me. I have my website. It's draditipal.com. I am on Twitter as well. And if you really want to be my friend, then
TikTok.
We can vibe.
You're going to say
Instagram.
TikTok, aren't you?
I'm not going to say TikTok. Listen, TikTok, I am a lurker. I am an absolute lurker. I have a burner account. I have no shame in admitting that. But TikTok is a young person's game, man. Like, I have not yet produced content on TikTok. But yeah, if you want to vibe with me, I am still a millennial, so I'm going to pitch for Instagram. I am Aditi Paul.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks heaps for joining us. If you love what we're doing here and want more, subscribe to the Date Forever podcast to make sure you never miss an ep. Come and hang out with us and other awesome couples who are fueling up their relationships in the Thriving Couples Collective Facebook group, or check us out at fuelcollective.com.au. Until next time, keep on dating, because better relationships equal a better world.